Let's start with the Houston Texans, and I've got the GPAs.
You
printed out here.
You didn't laminate it though.
It's easier if I had it laminated. It'd be easier to handle. The Houston Texans finished 20th in the composite B+ for PFF here. Did not have a first-round pick. First pick was Kamari Lassiter, the cornerback out of Georgia, at pick 42. Blake Fisher, the tackle out of Notre Dame. Kalen Bullock, the safety out of USC. Tight end Cade Stover out of Ohio State was the fourth-round pick. So solid reviews for the Texans draft, especially without a first-rounder. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, as always, shout out to Rene Bugner at RNBWCV on Twitter, who creates this composite graphic with all the grades of drafts out there. 20 different graders, essentially, he's put out there, including PFF, Mel Kiper Jr., The Ringer, all those kinds of things. So he's got the GPAs of all these people, the GPAs of each individual team as well. It's a cool table that we like to use every year. Yeah, I think it was a solid draft from Houston. Obviously, you got to factor in they didn't have that first-round pick, but 2 second-rounders, both of those guys, I mean, they have a pathway to starting, let alone just contributing. Kamari Lassiter could easily become the second corner there, given that reclamation yard of a second corner spot opposite Derek Stingley. And then Blake Fisher, okay, they don't need him to start as much. They have an entrenched starter already, Titus Howard, but Titus Howard didn't have a good year last year, so Fisher could absolutely push him for playing time. So certainly their first 2 picks definitely have a pathway. And then the rest of the draft, I think, was pretty solid depth.
What was our synonym for solid the other day?
Cogent.
Blake Fisher's a cogent tackle.
Cogent tackle
prospect. Probably got overlooked a little bit with Joe Alt on the other side, but I think, there were some people that really liked Fisher, especially on day 2 as a guy that does have starting potential. You don't find many of those tackles, but I think, Fisher does everything cogently. And I agree on there's Fisher's grades. You can see that. Nothing that stands out that's great. He was a mid-tier model guy, wasn't a bad model guy, wasn't a model hit. He was just, middle of the pack. Cogent.
Mid.
Even. Mid could be a compliment.
Good hit.
It's not Shadur Sanders calling his former teammate mid. Mid, in our terms, is sometimes a compliment, middle of the pack. Well, relative to your peers.
Yeah, I don't know that it is.
The kids use mid as poor.
Yes.
They're not literally saying middle. When I would use it, I would say middle. Anyway, I kind of liked Kamari Lassiter too. There was a lot of different reports on his 40 time in the high mid 4.5s to like over 4.6. But I think he's pretty quick. I think he plays fast enough. Another one of those very productive Georgia defensive players. Gets his hands on the ball. I think he closes quickly, plays really hard. And I do think he could play in the slot if needed, but I do think he does compete at that outside corner spot. The reclamation projects you're talking about, Jeff Okudah, C.J. Henderson, a couple former first-round picks, same draft class, I believe, too. I think Lassiter has a chance to compete with both of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think generally speaking, Lassiter is 40 time, whatever it ended up actually being, because it was a pro day and therefore sort of unofficial. It sounds like it was below the kind of threshold, the qualification number, right? If you're below 4.6, you've got a chance. If you're above 4.6, you probably don't. But what was interesting is I actually really liked his recovery speed on tape. Like, you didn't see people gap him, even if he lost at the line of scrimmage, and they had position, people didn't run away from him. So I don't know if he just doesn't run a 40 well or what the deal is, but I think his straight line speed is pretty good. And then even if it wasn't, he had a 6.6 3-cone. Like, his change of direction is off the charts good. So I think he has a chance of being a real steal in this draft who fell because, the 40 time is not particularly impressive.
The reason why I'm going to overuse the word solid everywhere here, I don't think any of these prospects are out of this world great. I think the top 4 guys, though, all have a chance to really contribute. So the third-round pick, Kalen Bullock, maybe the best pure free safety in this draft class. There weren't many free safety options. But I think he moves pretty well, drives on the ball. He's got some really good playmaking ability. You just don't want him in and around the box. You just don't want him playing the run, having to tackle. He will be over-aggressive at times, but I do like what he brings as a playmaker in the secondary. He might be a nice complement to what they have with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie back there. So I liked Bullock, and GM Nick Caserio was raving about Cade Stover, the 4th-round tight end out of Ohio State. dare I say, another solid player. Not the best tight end prospect, not the best athlete, productive player. They loved the way he played football, used to play defensive end, everything, played through injury, everything that Cade Stover brings to the table here. So they got a whole bunch of solid football players who, again, I think are going to contribute. And, Stover doesn't have to be a starter right away, obviously, with Dalton Schultz there. He'll be a complementary piece. Bullock will be a complementary piece, but I think all these guys have a chance to contribute.
Yeah, I thought Stover was pretty good. I probably preferred a couple other players to him in that list of tight ends, but I think he had a chance to be like the second best tight end in this class. That was the position that was sort of wide open after after Brock Bowers, obviously. But like, he's got some ability. He's good. In terms of after the catch, he's got an array of weapons. Like, he can run right over guys. He's also got more wiggle than you think he has, and he can get evade people. He understands
hands too, just 2 drops in his entire
good hands, and he understands zones and how to get open, those kinds of things. Like, he doesn't just run to a space and rely on being more athletic than the guy trying to cover him. He actually tries to manipulate the space in a way that Sanders from Texas, for example, doesn't necessarily. So yeah, I think he was a pretty good player.
Nobody on day 3 really stood out that I loved. That's about it. Where was Solomon Byrd on the... Solomon Byrd was 332 on the consensus board. They got him in the 7th. Marcus Harris, the defensive tackle out of Auburn. Again, he's got some ability in the run game. A little bit one-dimensional, might be able to contribute there. Ladarius Henderson, the tackle out of Michigan, tackle/guard. I know Michigan had a great offensive line. Henderson was not very productive relative to his teammates there, though. So, but I really like what the Texans did on with those first 4 picks.